You are about to witness a global movement. The medical system has failed us. Pharmaceuticals are designed to make us sick, weak, dependent. Not anymore. This is the Medicine Girl podcast with renowned healing expert and registered nurse Robin Stebbins. Every week, we shine the light on new ways to heal your body from the root, ignite your inner healer, and tap into your divine wisdom. Begin to live harmoniously with your mind, body, and spirit. You are stronger than you think, braver than you realize. Now is the time to wake up and start living healthier, wealthier, and laugh out loud happier. And here we go.
Hello, and welcome to the Medicine Girl podcast. It's me, your host, Robin Stebbins. And today I am so excited to have my brand new friend, Steve Tsuruda. Did I say that right?
Tsuruda, that's correct.
Tsuruda, yes. Who a friend of a friend introduced us, and I have just been fascinated ever since. And the reason I wanted to have you on my podcast primarily is you gave me faith and hope for the first time in a long time, probably since 2019. So if you would tell our audience, first of all, we could spend the next 2 or 3 hours just on your background, and it would be fascinating. And so maybe that could be like a podcast too. But if you could give just a brief description
Sure.
of who you are, but also I really want to tie in how you came to this place, which I'm calling the episode. It's the first time I've ever named the episode before we did it, but Sandpaper to the Soul. So that's kind of what I want to sort of let our viewers know how you got to this place that you're in now. And I'm not going to do any spoiler alerts. We'll get to that. But let's start out by Steve, take it away. Tell us who you are.
Thank you, Robin. I'm glad to share my story. I think for me, it's my experience here in being here in North America, United States. I think it's an American experience from deep down inside, because our family came as immigrants in the early 1900s. I was born here as a third generation of that family, and I was born here in an environment where the country started becoming a really strong melting pot. Before there was segregation, there's a few different things. You had European, you had African, but now that we had the Pacific Rim, West Coast, a lot of immigration from the Orient was coming into America on the West, especially on the West Coast. We used to say that the West Coast was the melting pot of what North America will eventually be, which would be a golden race.
Yeah. So Steve, I would really like to tie into the title, which is Sandpaper for the Soul. Mm-hmm. And I kind of want to know your background, because that's a integral piece to how you came to where you are now, which is, by my estimation, the best place so far that I've heard anyone land through this 2020, 2021. So in that, you gave me faith, you gave me hope in the ability for us to move through this with sovereignty, with freedom. But you had to come to this place through a very circuitous route. So I would really love it if you would explain to our viewers who you are, mm-hmm. and sort of give us a brief update on how you arrived at this place where you're sitting right now.
Well, good. Well, no, thank you very much. And let me just kind of preface this. What I hope to be able to do by giving some people different perspectives is what I'm doing in my career all the time, is really to help people get through a lot of different challenges they have to deal with. Because ultimately, when I was born here, my grandparents came over here from Japan, but my other grandparents came over here from China, and one of them was actually here as a native. And so I'm from a mixed background already. My mother was born to a Chinese father and a French, Canadian, Indian, American person. And she was orphaned when they had to declare polygamy was no longer legal in the United States. So my grandfather went back to China. So she was orphaned when she was 5 years old. She grew up in of course, orphanages and things like that, and foster homes. And one thing that I learned from her was that there is a whole concept of, well, not concept, just ingrained in you. You need to be able to survive by knowing who you are. And when you learn who you are and you find out the best ways to understand that, then it gives you another perspective on understanding how everybody else is. It's kind of a inside out, but when you're forced into that, it's a form of survival. And so when you're at that age, I would imagine my mother, because she was mixed race, was not accepted by any of her peers, just like I experienced when I was going to as I was growing up here in California. Because I'm Japanese name, but I have Chinese, half of me is Chinese. I don't look Japanese. I look mixed. And so I didn't fit anywhere. So part of that same experience my mother had, and that she told me about, and my grandparents as well, was that, you're different, but you're not different, you're you. Where the other groups, that your peers, they would tease you as kids that you're different. They wouldn't talk to you, they wouldn't play with you, they'd whatever. So I found my own space. So the idea at the end of the day is just, you're either going to survive that and become somebody, or you're going to get crushed and get depressed and really kind of throw up your hands. And in that case, in that area, when you're young, the way people look and the way people are taught, there's differences. The more difficult it is to grow up in that environment. Other if you didn't have, because you want to belong somewhere. And as a kid, and so you kind of find your own space in that way. And fortunately, because of West Coast, a lot of immigration from from the Far East, there's a melting pot of multiple cultures here. And so there were other people like me, very few. That was, again, they're no longer a pure ethnic background, but they were different. So there was a breakdown, kind of social barriers between different races, different cultures, that occurred here on the West Coast. I don't think it is occurring. There's places around the country where people of color are mixing with other people, but here on the West Coast, it seemed more prevalent because there was more kids like me. During that time, you learn to be yourself. You learned about all the different things you can do. And one of the areas that I learned that I really excelled in, because I was not really able to socialize all the time with one group of people, is that I spent a lot of time learning about things. I was very curious. I learned about my father's side. He told me the story about my grandparents when they came here from Japan. And during World War II, they were put in an internment camp in Tule Lake. Well, my father was born here in the United States. And had he not had an education, when my family was let out of internment camp, they would have been found destitute because there was no way for them to gain back anything they built because they weren't familiar with the American system and they didn't speak English. Well, my father did. So that helped that, in a matter of fact. So what that told, and what he always emphasized, everybody that he emphasized, is that you have to remember what you learn and your knowledge is worth more than anything they can take away from you. So they can put you in a internment camp, and those lessons resonate through every generation. But until you experience it or are surrounded by somebody that has that experience, you don't really understand what that really means. We're going through multiple changes in our society where people are being things are taken away from them, but they don't understand what that value is and what they're losing because they just aren't taught that. Mm-hmm. So what led me to what I'm doing is an area of understanding that there are people, not crowds. There are individuals and entities I would call spirits, because at the end of the day, when you learn about people, you learn that inside they're just not only the facade, but you learn who they are because you're beyond making that judgment on the way they look. You're not blonde, you're not brown hair, you're not white skin, you're not yellow, you're Steve, you're Robin. Okay. So we learn how to identify that and to really focus on that part of the person, because that's what I want people to focus on me. I don't look like you, but I know I can be friends with you because me, which is not my flesh and blood, but it's my consciousness, you identify. You can't put the name on it, right? But you can put a emphasis on it, and that's where we want to focus. So, as I was doing that, I was learning more about how human beings work, how our species work, how we socialize with people, how we can use our before we started quoting humanity, being people with each other and sharing ideas and growing things are very important underlying factors on how people can, there's a form of a well-being. There's a form of healing. It is a form where I say when you connect with multiple people at different levels, you create a more richer, whole, I call whole with a H, WHOLE experience, whether it's with an individual or a group. And also when you're in yourself, in our environment, you have a level of awareness because you've already gone through a disassociation with being part of a crowd. So I kind of look at it as, if you're in a forest and everybody's the same tree, you don't notice any difference. But when you're in a forest and you're a different tree, then you notice there's a difference. So we start seeing how we start interacting. So my fascination as I grew up, because I did grow up in a very mixed family, but also mixed disciplines. My father was an engineer. He was on the team with the military that created, after he got out of internment camp, he went into the military and the OSS and technical side to get education there. And he was on the team that invented night vision, to be able to see at nighttime under the stars. He was on the team that developed that. So the technology side is very fascinating because as I was very, very young, part of the things I would just do automatically is I'd go in my father's garage and take things apart. Stuff I wasn't supposed to take apart, but I was fascinated to know how they work. I remember in my high school science fair, because I was really nerdy. I mean, super nerdy. I'm nerdy on one side, very creative, but I built the first hologram.
Oh,
When I
wow.
was in high school, as my high school project, I was using an argon laser that my father lent me from the military. Don't tell anybody, okay? But he lent me, it's from their lab. It was a laser about yay big. And I built a hologram display. Now, this is way before anybody was doing holograms, but they were doing it in the military. And I was reading these papers that were declassified, right? Because I'm fascinated. My father he was an amazing engineer and super smart. And so I learned all that side. So I'm fascinated on all the things in the analytical side. And the other side of the coin is my mother. She's an artist. She ran a marketing agency. She had an advertising agency. So she was one of the first independent women of this generation from the 60s. She had her own agency. She worked. She wanted to be. She was treating everybody as equal, and she was treating everybody as equals. She created forums for artists to be able to be shown where there was barriers because of this fact that they were not known, they didn't have any money, or they're the wrong color, or the wrong gender. Right.
Right.
So we had this thing called Inspirations. Oh, we did a Cal Expo up here in Sacramento. And that was the first area where we brought together a collective of everybody and erase the boundaries of your physical assets, who you are, just because, and you are you. And do your art, show us what you got, your design, your creativity, your writing, your music, all these things were put together. And every year we would have a festival put together. So it was a kind of grassroots thing, right? And more artists started coming, and as the people in that area started learning about it, people coming from the other areas. And it was really focused on, in that particular time, the design world, graphics, communications, marketing, things like that, experiential systems. So being involved in that kind of environment where you're harnessing the collective of people really set a tone on, say, there's a power in humanity when they're thinking in the right way and they're able to have the ability to expand their ideas and share those amongst other people, that there's a greater somewhere around that kind of
Right.
right. So in that particular case, learning about what that meant really set the tone on how the things that I'm interested in was how do we communicate with people? Because I was originally designed. I was originally, once I got to a certain age and showed some ability, to become the CEO of the next generation of our marketing firm, a marketing and advertising agency. So I was groomed from day one, very young, to work in all the industries to how to produce a thing in marketing, like a printing, a brochure, or a photograph, or what have you. Because if I don't know how it's produced, there's no way I can propose that to a client. And then there's no way I can propose a tactic using one of those technologies, those early technologies, to achieve delivering a marketing message to position them in front of whoever they're trying to position them in front of, right? To get that message there and put across. So it's a very technical art, but it's also a social art. So I decided I wanted, so I know that so I grew up in that industry, so I knew how to do printing. So I said, well, I need to know the other side, the social art. So I learned, I wanted to say, well, I'm going to choose a discipline in college. So what do you want to do when you grow up and go to college? I said, well, I'd like to go into medicine and I'd like to learn psychology because I need to know what motivates people. If I want to be a good
Mhm.
CEO and if I want to be a good marketer, I need to know what's going to get you out of your chair to do something. I need to know how to motivate you. Not only motivate you through all your channels that you have now, but motivate you in other channels that you're not even aware of. So then I started leading me into the idea of there are other areas. And again, this is in the early 70s, right?
Right.
So we were investigating all these kinds of things, spiritualism,
Hmm.
all the things about how your psyche works, and understanding that there's just not a human being that we understand today, but there's a entity, a spirit. Because I didn't understand how we functioned until I got into the mechanical side of the human body, saying, well, it just doesn't run on batteries, right? There's something it's doing to be alive. What is that? There's something that it's doing to know that I'm talking to you and I'm aware of you, but there's no batteries for that either. And I'm
Yeah.
not plugged into anything. So I'm plugged. So you start trying to understand what all that means. Where is this energy coming from? Where are we plugged into? What are we plugged into farther? And start contemplating, like we back in the days we used to say, our navel. Right? We used to contemplate our navel because that's
Yeah.
the center of the universe. And so those kinds of things were fascinating. So understanding what humanity meant really is I would say for someone growing up, and this may be commonplace to a lot of people, but for me, it was discovery and a discovery of the biggest riches you could possibly have as far as being on a planet anywhere in the world. I can have lots of material stuff, but it won't fulfill my spirit, which is what I am. Okay. I am not my body. I am me. You are you. And we were thinking about all this stuff and I said, well, how do we nurture that? How do we grow that? How do we teach that? How do we help people get in tune with that? Because when you're in tune with those things, your body, your mind, your psyche, you can heal with it. Because there's disparity everywhere. And there will always be disparity in humanity. So the things I was fascinated in is really on the ways now in psychology, how those work as communication channels to send my marketing message. Well, in a case of not necessarily a marketing message, but how do we interact? How do we interface? How do we enable and empower people to do the same?
Mhm.
So those are keys because when you, I hate to use this cliche, have a village, you don't want to dictate. It's not, humanity is not to be dictated over. Humanity is all about contribution. We're a whole entity, a part of a larger entity that's part of a larger entity. And when we're working in harmony, the world is peaceful. We have happiness. We have no stress. We have no disease, right? Because there's a balance that's achieved from the physical and the spiritual side that become now you. But you then, once you are balanced, you have what we have to get, which is our vitality, our energy. We absorb that from our environment. Not only do we absorb energy from the sun and the food, the plants, you heard all that, but I absorb energy from you or you or you
That's right.
if I have an abundance of it. If I don't have an abundance, I'm lacking that, then it's like anything else, water will flow or my energy will flow to you. I will feel a need inside to say, Robin, something's wrong. Let's talk about it. Well, we're not going to get it answered now, but building those communications with someone and understanding how to interact with people put me on a lesson area where originally I was trying to target them with a message. But at the end of the day, I understand that the humanity side of people is bigger than just giving them a marketing message. It's enabling them and then empowering them individually to share that energy that we're all getting from everybody else as a collective to level us to a higher level. And that higher level leads to a bunch of really cool things, awareness, consciousness, of being aware of our planet, being aware of people that there's a level of empathy that could only occur once you establish those connections.
I love that. There's so much that you said that I want to unpack a little bit. Forgive that cliche as well.
Sorry.
But no, it's very important, I think, to understand each one of these pieces, because when you're feeling like you don't belong as a child, so when we're given these arbitrary belonging groups, whether it's based on our heritage or our race, or if you're adopted, like, it's what you look like. And so we have this key need as humans to belong somewhere. And so if you don't feel belonging, you've now created a deficit, a weakness. You are now owned by the person that you need to belong with. So that can create this hole. Go back to the hole. It creates a hole that you're trying to fill externally because you were fed lies. You were fed things that misconceptions that were programmed for, agendas, or just ignorance, or beliefs, or paradigms, call it what you will.
Yeah.
So then as we're progressing through that, we're looking, I think, when you finally realize who we are in truth, I am this energetic being, and this physical body is part of that. Mm-hmm. It's all part of it, but it's not the one piece. Am I structured water only? No. Am I flesh and blood? No. Am I energy? No. I'm all of it. I'm encompassing all of it. And so if we can get to that place where we're in harmony, where I'm in harmony with myself, I can then communicate with you, Steve, in authentic harmony. So I get to know who you are without my blinders on of who you are, if I'm believing in the facade, or I'm believing in who I think you should be based on my ideas, or So then we get a
level of authenticity that brings to the table.
Yeah. And it's forever, it's a fluid document. It doesn't stop as in like, okay, now I've got this figured out, done. No, we're evolving into, like, we could spend the rest of our lives, you and I, just having a conversation and still getting to deeper and deeper levels. So as we go forward, then we create this harmony with ourselves. Then I believe that what you're talking about reflects not only to people around me, but to the planet, to the universe. So then we have what I call skin in the game. I really want you to succeed at whatever you want, because I know that helps me succeed at what I want.
That's correct.
And again, it's saying, well, Darwin was full of malarkey. It's not survival of the fittest. It's not dog eat dog. It's working the way nature works, in tandem, in harmony. Plants know when we do better, they do better. So I love that concept, because it's a concept of no competition. It's a concept of helping one another. It's a concept of deeper levels of compassion. But I think the difference, though, is that it doesn't create a utopia. It simply creates this energetic field where we can be authentic and then grow and be challenged and have all those different pieces from there.
That's correct.
So that I kind of just wanted to point those pieces out when we're having this interface, because it is, I think, a miracle that your version of the universe can have a conversation with my version. And we both form these concentric circles that, when they combine, form a brand new energy.
That's correct.
Never been created before, that we can then kind of surf around with and see what does that create, that interest. But there's no competition. It's not like I'm going to put you down or get yours so that I can get mine. That's the opposite way of thinking.
That's correct.
So I appreciate you saying all of those things, because it also gives us this understanding of who you are in this energetic being, how you came to perceive the world the way you perceive it. We all perceive it differently. I don't think any of us go through it unscathed without trauma and bumped and bruised here and there. It's all part of it.
That's
but
correct.
I think the beauty, Steve, is that we get to have a conversation that's authentic. As authentic as we can.
That's correct. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, there's a lot of things that are you learn over a period of time that create disparity. Someone loses on it.
Yes.
So now you kick somebody out of your village.
Yes.
Now you're one person weaker. Right? Now you can use that as a tactic if you want to exercise control. But in the case of humanity, the idea is it's not control. It's a almost like a social path, a humanity path, where as everybody comes together, it will guide itself. It'll be we call the flow. Okay?
Yes.
You go with the flow. When you go with the flow, at a certain extent, you pick up energy because you have no friction.
Yes.
The flow carries you because you're guided. I hate to use cliches, but think about the flow.
Oh, let's use it.
And there's you're a river, and there's different things that every time you make a turn or a bend, you add or have another river coming into you, or have some of it lost. At the end of the day, that river's collective is now moving on its own. It's really has its own momentum, and it ricochets or bounces or turns or tumbles over different things. But at the end of the day, those contribute to the beauty of the river and the individuality of it. Humanity is something that we want to be able to make sure, in a lot of sense, that we don't lose any of the people that are in our village. There's smart people, there's people that are in the industry, there's people with money. All these things are power plays, but at the end of the day, humanity contributes no matter what level once we understand how to harness it.
That's it. That's absolutely true in my belief as well. Because then you're not throwing anything away. You're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
It's a collective. It's a human capital at its finest.
Or if you're having, a hard time, the village comes and, hey, Steve, how can we support you?
That's correct.
How can we elevate you?
Yes.
Instead of banishing, creating a vacuum. Right. The universe gives us the blueprint for how to, I think, go with that flow. Because it can be more complicated because we have the ability to lie to ourselves. We have the ability to hear lies and believe them, false beliefs, control, whatever, doesn't matter. But this is the way that we can weed through all that. It's like, okay, whatever the circuitous path that brought you to this point.
Yeah.
Now you can release that aren't you authentically. Somebody else's voice, somebody else's control, wanting to be a good boy, be a good girl, can be your flow path. Get rid of the oars, stop fighting upstream.
No. Yeah.
And go in that way. So you're this successful ad exec. You're in the advertising world.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I can just picture it. Like I could just see you being successful at pretty much anything you do because you have that. It's what I call that thirst for knowledge. You're not doing it to get a degree or to get status, or you genuinely are curious. And I think that is such a gift. These people that I run into, I'm one of them too, but you're genuinely curious about how things work. From tinkering and taking things apart to now, like, how does the human operate?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, the fascination about all the different things in our physical world, I've always been interested in because I have a little bit of an analytical mind because I was trained that way. But the other area that really kind of is like a rock in my shoe kind of thing is to see disparity in people being exploited. Because my family was. I am the product of. I was surrounded by people that were victim of, and I still am. People are being, whatever, disparity comes in all kinds of forms. So if there's a ways we can help that, And one of the areas that I was doing, because I was, my job in Valley here, Silicon Valley here, is a commercializer. At the end of the day, when you're a marketer, I need to know how to package your deal. I'll give you an example, real fun one. I had my little ad agency, right? And one of my small companies was Bank of America, they're over there on California Street. And they had this hair up their ass. It says, we got to get in a digital age. We're going to build these little devices called these teller machines. And I said, this is disruption. That is ridiculous amount. I mean, nobody's going to want to stand on a street corner with everybody and their mother walking by, looking over their shoulder, emptying out their bank account and typing in numbers. Are you crazy? Nobody's going to want to do that. And so we had to figure out how to overcome that fear, but also deliver a service that made a market differentiator for Bank of America. So the first one we put out was a test one we built was called the Mirror Teller. And we put that on the corner of Market Street and Van Ness, right there, the highest traffic. And around it, we had a velvet rope and we had 4 armed guards, right? And we said, okay, who wants to try the Mirror Teller machine? And we want to get your feedback. We're going to use it more for marketing and everything else. And we had buttons on there that really didn't do anything. You couldn't access it, but it would say, do this, do that, and make a choice. Do you want to take money out? Do you want to buy a concert ticket? Do you want to buy groceries? Do you need to cash in all these different choices? And they were randomly generated. So we get all the data. And then what happened is we finally figured out that people really enjoyed being able to interface with their bank account, have their own PIN number. Personalized medicine, personalized banking was coming to the frontier. So we're actually getting adoption, not from the older people, but all the younger people. I don't have to go back in there, talk to old Mrs. What's a Maduddy because I want $15 for my bank. I just go whip it right here, put my coin and boom, out of here. So the digital age was going on. So we were trying to figure out, well, a Mirror Teller, that's kind of hokey. Steve, come up with it. So we went back in a little team, and then I spent some time just kind of wandering around. And I got on my motorcycle cruising around, and I go, hey, wait a minute. This thing can do more than just give out money. It can do give up bus tickets. You can check your bank account. I said, this is a versatile teller. Versatile. Good idea. I went back to the meeting next morning. I said, boys, I got it. Versatile. All of them hit the ground. I showed them a little sample, a little mock-up and everything. We did everything in pencil. So Versatile, they go, this is phenomenal, Steve. We want to use that name. I says, well, I just don't give stuff away. I says, how about 65,000? Can we have the rights to that? And all of a sudden I realized that creativity and intellectual property became valuable. I didn't produce anything other than a positioning statement for their company, what they did, and a brand value that became synonymous with an industry where you're building a mark, and other companies subsequently were all trying to focus that way. All the agencies out there were really trying to build value propositions where noun became an adjective, noun became an action. You Google your stuff, you wipe your butt with Kleenex, all the different things that became brand and associated. So Versatile was a hit out of the park. Even machines that were not even Versatiles, people were calling them Versatiles. So learning on how to bring ideas to people and how to position things was part of my running my ad agency. I had clients from the medical, from the gaming. I mean, we started Oracle's program with Larry Ellison. He was in a little shop there in San Mateo. Next door, one building over, was a little tiny shop called Electronic Arts, a bunch of geeky game makers. And I just had to talk to them because I knew the people that were doing the development. We were doing a lot of marketing and signage and everything. And these guys were there and they go, well, who the hell are you guys? Oh, we're Oracle. What do you guys do? We do database. I said, what the hell is database? I go, so then I started learning. I learned that I need to know what your product is and what generation it is. And what does this mean to your competitors in your marketplace?
Mm.
So I got experience with groups in the Valley here just by bringing them to market about all their different kinds. And so it was a little bit of an advantage because I could touch everything. Data structures, internet structures, hardware structures, telecommunication. I mean, you name it, everything you think is called technology coming out of Silicon Valley and beyond. We were right there. right on the edge of all that stuff. So knowing very well and see what was happening, then as the valley started growing, more and more people from around the world were coming there to do things. So kind of living through that era. And I was working in a lot of groups, and we were saying, well, one group said, Steve, we're bringing a product to market. We would like to have you on our advisory board. So what the hell's an advisory board? Well, we're venture capital, and we'd like you to become one of our entrepreneurs in residence on an advisory board. I said, we'll give you some stock. He says, what the hell is that? So I learned all about how they were bringing stuff to market. But at the end of the day, what we were doing is I was looking at technologies and how we could position them and bring them to the market. And there were disruptions and continuing innovation. But I was interested in disruption. Continuing innovation is, we'll just make it better. Disruption is a tactic you use to break your industry in half, create a new white space, plant a flag on another planet or another shore, and tell everybody, see you later, follow me. And I'm going to put a bridge here, and every time you go across it, you're going to pay me a shekel. So that's the highest level of understanding how we can monetize solutions to an audience, whatever audience that was, and learning all the different tactics depending on the market share kind of gave me a grand depth breadth of what was going on in the valley. One of the groups called AT&T was a customer of mine, and we wanted to do this thing called a hackathon. And I said, well, why do you want to do a hackathon? He says, well, we want to invite the brightest mind computer art engineers around the world to solve some fake problems that we're going to put up here. So I said, you mean you're going to get free information? You're going to have free technology, you're going to have free coding? No. We're inspiring this whole ecosystem to accelerate. I said, you guys are ripping people off. And I was not this far from the truth. They had in the other room somebody with a checkbook. At the end of the hackathon, those awards, every one of those award winners got in that room with those people there and said, by the way, Jane, we love your product. We'd like to license it from you. Right? Well, they go ahead and they take that and they just build $1 billion company. What does Jane get? A $50 check or $5,000 check. And she leaves gone because she was really there to solve a completely different problem that was passionate to her. An entrepreneur trying to solve a problem that's important for them to learn how to do that, to solve that problem, was taken away from them. They were exploited. That idea that she had never ever got to market. And the other big fat cat over here, AT&T, took that idea and ran with it or did something with it, but actually capitalized on that person. So there was a disparity. Somebody didn't win in that equation. And so coming back and trying to understand how do we do ways of bringing things to market to be able to make sure that everybody wins in these occasions. Because when you have disparity, like I said, you're kicking somebody out of your goddamn village. Now you become weaker. Now you lose intellectual thought process. You lose a being that's part of your collective engine of energy that your energy creates in your social environments and the people you work with can now grow upon. By doing so and being conscious of that, we can develop new business structures that will be able to be inclusive. To make sure that the entrepreneur, Robin, comes up to me and says, Steve, I got an idea for a solution. This is just an idea. It'll enable you to do these things. And I said, really? So let me look at that. So you're telling me your idea will enable people to do these things. Let me kind of poke around in my ecosphere and see if there's anything I can even understand. Because once you tell me I can enable you to do something versus I have a final product that does something, enable is a future vision. When I give you a product today, it's already yesterday's story. When we're working in the future, we can then orchestrate future paths, future marketplaces. It's like when my mom was teaching me how to cook because she was a gourmet chef, and I have 5 ingredients. Each one of these is going to be dominant in that dish, or we put them all together, it's going to make a brand new dish. By combining them and converging these ingredients together, you enable a new thing to happen, right? So the same way in market share, for technology, for thought process, for whatever you're trying to do, when you look at the future ahead of yourself and build solutions that enable you to combine or connect or converge things together, you build new frontiers, you disrupt, and you're first one standing in that particular area, we call white flag. Now, I kind of get experience with one of my clients One of my clients that we had early on was a company called Kabira Technologies. They were trying to solve the problem for mobile phones, because I had one of those. Your internet, which was just coming out, right? This is back in 2000. Your internet was just coming out. And I wanted to be able to use my banking system so I could pay for something. Well, that was crazy thought. How do you make a phone deliver an application so that I can create an interaction, get access to information, use the internet to do reservations and everything, and then have my banking system connect to that so I can pay for those services or buy what I want to do? They didn't have anything that existed like that. Nada. So the whole idea was how, if you wanted to do that, you'd have to spend probably about a year with a bunch of C# coders that code everything into place. And then if you wanted to make a move out or change, it'd take them another year to undo it and redo it again. So we figured out a way to make these three market areas that were converging into a solution that everybody can use, not exclusively to a particular company or shop. A democratized way so that people can move into this era using this technology. And again, democratization is loosely termed here because we're only talking to a small audience of developers, right? So now we were able to, instead of having a little code line, you have a graphical interface and you drag and drop what you want. Bank service here, telecommunication service here, internet service here, reservation process here, boom, 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 boom. Very complex application. Push a button, it generates the code, drops it on what's called a fourth generation application server. And now it runs real time, you can deploy it, right? The world of convergence, that's fourth generation of applications of computing, which are multiple, that is an era called convergence. Those three technologies came together. Everybody takes it for granted right now. But back then, if you wanted to get a mobile phone in the Caribbean, you'd have to get it months in advance. This you can provision it while you got on the plane. So there's the whole idea from that is knowing very well when you're trying to build technological systems and opportunities in market share is enabling things to converge things to create a new white space. And then building that platform so that other people can use it to build this new era. Does that make sense?
I just want to point out too why that's so important is that levels the playing field so that you don't have to be born into education and privilege. You can be anyone on the planet, understand and be able to tap into this and contribute equally, because that's always been my thing. I think it's similar to you. Like, I want everyone's voice to be heard, their authentic voice, not their traumatized, dealing with their past history. But when you're in your truth, when you're in that state of harmony, what lights you up? So it could be like we've left behind so much genius because of this current system.
As an exploitation system, it sets a tone. I mean, I go to the first hackathon with hope. I go to the third hackathon, I'm going, you know what? They're going to rip me off. I ain't going no more.
Yeah.
Well, now you lose some brain trust, you lose some inspiration. All the parts that the humanity should be contributing to gets walled off.
Yeah.
Now we want to battle that. So the model right now that we see in our marketplace, the evolution of the internet, the third generation of the web, is all about marketing to people. People are the commodity. That's born from pre-internet era called the advertising model and demographics and the martini hour. Because when I used to get together with my colleagues, we didn't have internet, we didn't have social networks. We would get together and have our own social network down at Harry's and have martini cocktails and talk about the business. What are the trends? What's doing what? What generation is doing that? What are these trends? And then look at all the original analytics on what these trends are. So I know for my customer how to position their marketing message to the right audience. That was all done in that era. It's all sped up now with the internet, but also a lot of things get lost. So in the case of building systems, we now have so much more at our disposal, but we have less collaboration and understanding because of that.
Right.
Because people become numb, they start listening stuff. So, and also in the area of building companies, there's a level where big pharma, big corporations, big overlords have grown their ad machines so big that they're out of control. Now, the ad machine is exactly what we're trying to do. They captured it. We used to capture it at the Martini Hour and say, okay, we're going to put an ad in the front page of the New York Times. It's going to reach 25,000 people, and they're all between the ages of 18 and 75, or whatever, male and female. Well, now I can target you all the way down to your zip code. I can target you all the way down to your phone. In fact, I can target all the way down to a particular thing. You might like jelly beans, and I don't even need to know where you are. That engine is capitalizing on your information, who you are, and productizing you so that they can target a message to you so they can make a sale. That's where it all is evolving to. That model is past its zenith already, past its zenith. Now they're trying to remodel things, make it the metaverse and all that bullshit. That's the same business model. There's a winner, there's a loser, and there's a propagator, and there's an exploiter. We want to break that model. That model, first and foremost, Silicon Valley, Draper, Sandhill model, is antiquated. It's no longer viable for our, and it's
hallelujah.
It's harmful.
Yes, and you can see where we are today because of that model. It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable for anyone. Even these people that want more, it's still not sustainable for them.
That's right. And what it does is it creates a level of exclusion in a certain sense, right?
Right.
I'm not allowed to do things. I'm not allowed to say things. A level of control and compartmentalization and, again, segregation, disparity, where we're trying to do it the other way around. Make sure that people have communications. They're level, they're transparent. They're talking about the right things. So in the case of what we're trying to do in areas that we're concerned with is the area, and the biggest barrier is, number one, is the technology and humanity gap. We were studying this back in the 60s. Technology is going to get so far away from humanity that humanity will either get rid of it or they'll succumb to it. And what's going on? The latter. So how do you combat that? You take technology and you break it down so that instead of using technology or having to know how to use, for example, create an application, we make sure that there's a forum that we help everybody, no matter what age they are, to get inspired about what we're doing in this area, specifically in the context of helping humanity. And I'll talk about what that means in our Humanizing project. And allowing the collective of people to see something fabulous and to say, wouldn't it be nice if I could do that? Now, that is human technology, thinking, inspired, and wanting to say something about it because it means something to them, right? So instead of saying, no, well, you better learn HTML5 or C# or get on the latest AutoCAD, even though you're living out in who knows where and you got no connectivity, you have no devices. Let's put together a forum in which we will all collectively seed and grow that idea of yours. And then we'll apply technology to build it, whatever it needs to be built, whether it's a mechanical or whatever it is. And now put that into the open market, and the people that have underprivileged and the people around the world that can't afford a commercial version of that get access to that technique, that information, that study. Because it came from not a technologist figuring out the code, it came from a human being that has technology here called humanism. So now we foster that. So first one, we break the technology humanity barrier down to nothing. You can create technology without knowing a line of code because we want to make sure that we support that growth by holding funds outside so we can pay for the coders to realize your idea. And the same thing is you will no longer have to be subjugated to having to have a license of it. It'll be Robin's technology because you're the one that came up with that great idea. How to solve this problem. And we want to foster the ideas on how to solve challenges for the human being, specifically the Human Anatomy Project, because what we're starting there is studies on now we can see more things in the human body that you've never been able to see before, and understand the human body not through pictures, but to understand the body through mathematics, because everything in our world is physics, isn't it? So the marriage of the idea of putting things together and inspiring and breaking that barrier down for humanity gap also gives us the idea on how we can make sure that these get in the hands of everybody by enabling democratic and democratization of the information, all while still being able to do a commercial version. The commercial opportunities that this technology will create, spatial volumetric data for the human anatomy, et cetera, will license to commercial opportunities. They can take it to the market and exhaust the market, go wherever they go until they've reached the zenith of that market and they decide no longer either penetrate that market or pull out of that market. Whoever's left over in those markets come back to our nonprofit, the Human Anatomy Project, so they can get access to that solution to heal their people, to lower their energy costs, whatever it is we're doing in that study to make sure that cures and healing of people are understood, that we have a library that we can pass on to posterity, and also give abilities for people now to say, why I contributed to something monumental, and being inclusive that way. There's nobody gets exploited in our system. Everybody is a win-win-win across the board, including the people that put money in it because they're going to get a return.
Right.
Get a return.
But what about the people that take your technology back to their village? Could they potentially have the ability to exploit it against their villagers?
Well, in the case of what we're doing as far as the Human Anatomy Project, the technology is really understanding the human anatomy and how we could cure or stop diseases, identify them early, how we will better lives as people start living longer, have a better quality of life. We will start looking at systems and techniques and understanding, because we can now quantify the human anatomy and look at cause and effect of interaction and things that are like depression and things like that, understand how they're sort of wired and how we can work with that and help return that back to whatever makes that person feel good.
That was what was so exciting to me when you first explained the Human Anatomy Project, was simply that. It's not, if I'm depressed, that doesn't mean it's just right here. That means we need to look at everything. What's my gut health? What are my social interactions? What is my brain chemistry? What is my susceptibility? What are the thoughts I'm telling myself all the time? What's my diet like? On and on and on. It's all of that. And so when you can take the guesswork out of it, you know, that subjective bias when I'm working with someone, that's gone. So now it's a mathematical equation. It's something very simple, but we get to then create all these different modalities to support what we found.
It's an agnostic tool to help humanity, is what it is. Now, all of this Humanity Project, people wondering what I'm talking about. This is all born out of our commercial programs. Now, in our commercial world, we were working in what we call polyplexity environments. Gemini Digital Twin Technology Group is a polyplexity solutions group. Now, the word polyplexity we coined, it's been around for a while, but we started using it about 3 years ago. And polyplexity means that the virtual and the digital worlds act as one, not interact as one, act as one. Okay, so you can move seamlessly from the digital world to the physical world and back and forth. That's because that was all under the impetus of the world of things that we need to know. The things that we're doing, the things that we're experiencing in our physical world have to be understood, so that if we want to navigate, we want to interact, we want to create around, whatever our action needs to be, we need to understand what our physical world contains so we can bring it into a digital interaction at such a precise and high resolution way that is indiscernible from your physical world, from environments. Okay,
right.
So we're looking at, how you can build interactive systems, immersive marketing tools. I mean, imagine, you're flown into the cockpit of a brand new D-60 airplane and you're able to fly it, but not look cartoony or plastic. You're actually in a portal that took you there. It's as real as you can possibly perceive. So by wanting to achieve those challenges, like when I grew up in the advertising agency business, I need to know the technologies that will support that experience. Printers support printing. Recording devices support audio sounds. Well, what does it take to support and a conscious infrastructure, a conscious environment where you feel that you've now entered, you are in a digital world, but you're just as fluid as you're acting right now in our perceived real world. So we need to know what those were. So technological underpinnings are very sophisticated, but at the end of the day, the experiences are very simple and elegant. So in the case of
And I love that though. Well, I want to back up just because I think our audience is going to have the same question I did. When I first heard you explain that, I'm like, this sounds like you're wanting us to be in the technological world as the Matrix is. So
Matrix is fake. What we're doing is real.
Yeah. How do we maintain that soul, that humanity, the skin in the game so that we can see this is still Mother Nature? There's nothing that can replace that. There's no technology that can map my soul, I don't believe.
No.
How do we maintain that sovereignty and the humanity and the spirit with still integrating with this amazing technology?
Well, you know, our goal is really to set the precedence of what's behind the scenes as experiential things that are beneficial. Okay, I'll give you some applications in the Humanity Project because that's where we're focusing this polyplexy technology into, because we can map the human anatomy as a thing with height, width, and depth all the way down to the micron, and understand. But this creates an actual digital twin of that person. We're going to gather it from different modalities. Doesn't matter what it is: MRI, CT, X-ray, volumetric, whatever. Once we have a model there, then you can apply mathematics to it. So when you're looking at distress systems, for example, I may have, let's take a basic physical thing. I have a broken bone. Well, instead of working on your bone, I don't know what's ever there. I'm going to take the digital twin over here, and I'm going to start working using math and engineering tools to start regenerating, rebuilding, and reconstructing that broken bone before I decide we need a police. Oh, but I reset it correctly. Now you got a crooked finger the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So the application of what we're doing is basically to set the tone, set the basis of this is a way now to heal, to include, to restore, regenerate the human being first, because there is a disparity and there's a need, and there's people that have not unfulfilled lives, but unable to have a full life.
Right, and I see that every day. I'm a registered nurse doing home health, so I see the disparity every day, and it really bothers me inside. And I know there's a solution to it. I mean, I do grassroots and I go from the ground level, but it's one person at a time. That's not fast enough for me. Yeah. So this I really like because it takes the human error out of it so that we can test all these applications on, okay, let's heal Robin's depression.
Let me correct you there. It doesn't take the human error out of it. Okay. It enables humanism and thought and process to be precise and scale.
Okay.
Error is always going to be there. Right. But that's how we learn.
But when we're doing the error, we're doing it on the virtual twin, though, aren't we? So that
on a digital
twin,
non-invasive, non-destructive, right?
And if I make a mistake, I'm not making it on you, which I see.
I won't be doing anything to you until we have a conclusive idea that we can collaborate. See, one thing about data and what we're doing in volumetric environment, I can share what we're doing with other colleagues around the world at the same time.
Yes.
Because let's take, for example, in understanding the human anatomy, volumetric capture of the body in math versus images. Images have a resolution. You blow it up, it's still grainy, and there's only so much information there. The bigger you blow it up, the less you see. Well, the human eye can only see 30 bits of information there. The computer is looking at, in this particular context, 31,000 values. So wouldn't you rather be able to have the tools at your disposal as a doctor or as a radiologist to filter out and lens into and capture things of interest to you that your eyes cannot possibly see, but give you the ability to now to have a way to explore those areas of interest, and then as you understand what this is, put those into multitudes and multitudes of digital twin experiments, treaters or training or therapies or techniques to come up with the idea on how to solve that issue of that particular patient, because this is now a personalized solution for you. for the person or the person that's in it. So the idea is, again, when you can do that, now you can have a way that we are familiar with in our internet to share things, right? I can see this is how I'm going to, Mrs. Smith, this is how I'm going to break your, how you're going to fix your finger. You're going to get online. You're going to get a fit. You're going to get on with me on like a Zoom call like this. We're going to put on a headset and we're going to literally blow your finger up to room size and we're going to walk through it. See that right there? See right there? See this right there? This is how it's going to fix. We know precisely it's going to fix by this time, or more or less, based on your age. We can do this. This is amazing experience. The suffering it ends, number one.
But you also, too, just to interject, sorry to keep interrupting, but what you've also done is you've given a visual to that person of her finger that's broken. That in and of itself can help heal the damage.
Of course. Well, what I'm saying is that I said right there to end suffering.
Yes.
You don't have to wait. The ability for you to know, and this may be a day or so, we crunch the file or whatever the appointment time is, the sooner the better. Just the fact that you know releases a level of anxiety that could be never overcome until you get a final diagnosis that you're well.
In addition, though, by seeing how to repair it, visually understanding and seeing this is how my finger is broken, your body can start its own inner healing process. You ignite that inner healer. They've shown that with just with OCD, showing them their brain scan, showing them on the brain scan where their OCD is. That was it. No drugs, no medicine. They didn't do any therapy with that. They just showed them, here's the damaged area or what's exhibiting the OCD. And a miraculous number of them, I think it was 80%, improved dramatically.
Well, you understand there's a cause and effect.
Yes.
There is a level of consciousness that awareness can overcome challenges that you have in your body. The mind over body. You heard the mind and the soul. And so part of the Humanizing Project is to understand those interactions. Okay. When you have a way now to take my finger or my head, I maybe received a trauma falling off my bicycle. And now we take that and we can now put different techniques that we learned through the studies of the Humanizing Project. These techniques aren't ready yet, but doing the studies through the Humanizing Project will answer those questions. We can do now and say, okay, you have a bonk on your head. This is things that are going on. We can see it going now, 5 minutes from now. Yes, you have brain bleeding, blah, blah. We got to do this now. But we have a way now to make a determination and basically break down a lot of different things that are out there, misdiagnosis, et cetera, et cetera. But the person seeing the experience also tunes in their awareness, their psyche, if people want to understand their psyche, their spiritual side, knowing that something is going to be repaired or we identify what that challenge is.
Yes.
You now are in control versus out of control.
Exactly. And I think a big piece of everything that's going on that we can see right now is fear.
Exactly.
The disease of fear. And I see it with a lot of my patients too. They're terrified. You're terrified. What happens when you're in fear? Your prefrontal cortex shuts down. So I look to authority to, you tell me what to do. I'm terrified. So I'm going to...
All the glass shields come up. You're not penetrable.
But we circle back to when we were first talking and you have a hole, you're weak. You're dependent on that other person to give you the right information. You're not discerning from a higher place of harmony, whether that's a good approach or not. You're just like, fix it. I'm terrified.
Yeah. With knowledge,
so I own you.
That you restore the harmonic, you're reversing the tide.
Yeah.
You're not going to fix it, but you're going to reverse the tide. Right.
I think that's what we're all about.
No, I'm not leaking anxiety. Now I'm gaining hope. And there's a whole
sovereignty as well.
There you go. So there, the body has a way to tune itself in those directions as well, because you can heal with the spirit and the mind as well by knowing and understanding, right?
Yes.
Satisfaction is a very simple way for most people to understand. I'm satisfied. I feel good. I'm not satisfied, man. I'm pissed off. Well, that's a simple example I would tell a 3-year-old how you can feel good, how you can feel balanced, how you can build and share that with other people, because at the end of the day, I'm interacting with you. I don't want to put an exploitation between us. I want to make sure whatever I interact with you, you're satisfied
Yes.
before I am. A way to understand that we are contributing to each other versus exploiting from each other.
Yes.
So there's a positive give and take that by doing so and showing this to a patient and having them experience it, and having not one doctor, it may be your brother sitting over here, it may be Dr. Smith over here, Dr. Barry over here. They're all in the same place with you, because now we can bring them with this, because we have connectivity, we have experiential environments, we have immersive systems, we know how to make you feel and understand what we're looking at, and drive that empathy that can be delivered only through that mixed reality environment, not looking at a picture.
Yeah.
That your care is being taken care of. Your level of anxiety just hits the basement. You come in.
Yes. Oh, plus you have 20 more eyes on it.
You got the village, you got your village.
You got your village.
We're
Yes.
harnessing people again as a support mechanism in this particular case, right? But also in a regeneration, fixing you and getting you back to being a human being mechanism is here. And the collective all automatically spiritually there, because the fact that they're here looking and focusing on your challenge also gives you energy to feel comforted, to feel that somebody's doing. All these are small pieces, but in the collective of those things really uplift that person and remove that some of that suffering. That's just one context you could be doing things in. There's a lot of other things we can do, but in the case of what this enables you to do, not only can we quantify and understand the architecture of the body and on the hard parts, the physical parts, the bones and the flesh, but we can also start understanding how to map and understand the spirit, and also understand the brain and the mind. Like you said, mind over matter. Mind, you can talk yourself into being sick. Well, what does that mean? How does that manifest itself? I don't know how that works. I know I've seen it.
Right.
I don't know how that works. So let's look at ways. Let's say, for example, just a simple idea. Well, if I talk myself into feeling bad, I'm going to have physical manifestations of that somewhere. My temperature may go up, whatever. I can't sleep. We're going to take those values when you're in that condition and put that in the model so that we understand, should those indicators, those pattern recognition of precursors to depression are occurring in you. Simply the fact that we can now measure that with light.
That's what I was so excited about, because you'd be able to start detecting, even from that signature, every cell, membrane, and everything, it has this vibrational signature.
That's correct.
And what we're talking about, especially, is harmony. So when something is getting out of harmony, we can detect it from the jump. From the second it gets out of harmony, alleviate.
The body is a vessel for energy. The body is a vessel for energy. Energy is infinite.
But then we're not needing toxic medications. We're not needing harmful procedures. We're not needing radiation and
certain things. Yeah, you have to do that because you broke something. You have to fix them, stop them from bleeding, and all the other stuff. But at a certain level, we can reduce all of that overhead, which is also going to make an impact. But
that is most important, I think.
Yeah, we can like I said, we can start reversing the tide from feeling ill to feeling hope. Well, in the same way for people now, people have access. We're bringing something that we want to leave as a stewardship.
Yes.
We understand what that means, and other technologies that will utilize what we're doing here to understand how cause and effects we can experiment in that form. Now you have the AutoCAD of the body and the engineering tools to understand cause and effect, load balances, or whatever you're trying to answer can now be put into play. The whole area of understanding the physics and the understanding the mathematics of the body is now within the grasp of everybody. This tool set is now broken down to a whole new way so that you can now do things. I can give an example. I can identify one day, that everything in our body has electrical energy. Every cell has its own spectrum. Every type of cell has a unique spectrum or a unique frequency. And I'll tell you about frequencies easy. I walk by my plants and say, hello, how are you doing? My plant feels good because I gave them alpha waves.
That's it.
Right? Okay, so my brain, my body, my entity created this and gave it to that because I directed it. Well, every cell, even though you're not doing anything conscious with it, still oscillates, or else it would be dead, right? You'd be sweeping it up on the broom and putting it in the garbage can. So we'll be able to start understanding what that does. Understanding there's we call vitality, which is essentially energy. Energy we bring from other places that we don't keep, we pass on.
That's right.
Because energy is efficient. It doesn't stay with us, it moves for us. If you don't eat for 5 days, you're not going to feel too dang good, right? Because it's not staying in your body, you're going to use it up to stay alive. So in the case of what this means is now we can see how that we can work that to use that to heal people. That energy is very important when you tune people. So we will start, and some of the ideas I'm coming up with are, our theories and hypotheses of what we potentially can do. Now we have a data structure. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist. I have a pretty good understanding on the physics world, the physics and math and how they work, and understand that we have a team that knows what we're trying to do, and they're actually breaking through these barriers for us to say, yes, we're on the right path, is to be able to say we have a solution that will just be the basis on which critical medical decisions can be made, because it could be a measuring stick that can be put everywhere. You had a case, you get an anomaly, you have this condition. Those are through studies. But later on, once we have the body and the digital twin parts of the body in a large enough library, we can start looking at interactions, how they manifest themselves. We have not only a campus in the Humanity Project for the human body and medical side, but we have mind and body and spirit side, studies in psychology, studies in psychiatry, studies in interaction, studies in humanism, right? Humanism, because when you have one talking to one, there's a certain amount of things going on. When you have two talking to one, supporting them, there's another set of powers. When you have and multiply, these things all can be also understood on how we can harness these things, because there's a spectrum of a collective at a certain volume, a certain phase, that if I figure out this is going to help that person feel better, not now, but immediately, there's some benefits to understanding how that works. And later on, use that as a mechanism to teach people, because ultimately we want this to get into curriculum. The smart minds coming that are unfettered, the unfettered imagination is what we want to harness for the technology humanity gap, because the unfettered imagination has no bias. Children, in a certain sense. I remember when I was a little boy, I was sitting in the dashboard of my dad's 51 Mercury Capri and looking at this huge radio on the dashboard. I go, that it would be nice if we had a map here. So it shows how to get to the grocery store.
That's it.
Cool. And this was back in the 60s.
Yeah.
So unfettered imagination is where we grow a wealth of new growth and knowledge, because it is unfettered.
And that again doesn't throw anyone out of the pool. No, everyone's welcome. Everyone's with their own brand of genius. Those ideas you had, like, wouldn't it be great to have a map here?
Yeah.
Whereas somebody else might see something completely different. You've got the way the old story goes, you've got 12 people sitting around a vase of flowers. Everyone has a different perception. And they also have a different way of explaining it. And what somebody might ask, why is it there? Somebody might want to know, like, every flower that's in that they can see. So we have this, everyone's can bring their own brand of genius.
That's right.
That's the world I want to live in. And that's it. And why? Because it's that win-win-win. You still win because of that. You're not being altruistic, which is great, but it's not sustainable, I think, ultimately, or martyring yourself for the quote greater good. It's this triple win idea, and nature does the same thing. It's not like they have a application process for each tree that goes into the forest. It is in the forest because it is in harmony. It's a fail-safe program.
That's right. See, one of the reasons why I built my own ventures was I wanted to stop that business model exploitation. Right? Me being exploited, I've lost businesses, I lost technologies because of that. So it developed a mechanism by which we can go to market, bring things that will be made for humanity, while maintaining a win-win-win across everybody in that ecosystem. I'll tell you exactly how we're doing it. So let's say, Robin, you come up with a great idea and it enables you to do this new thing. In our particular case, volumetric data for the human anatomy. You just come up with that idea. And then I say, okay, let's apply this. Let's apply this to this solution, that solution, this solution. What do you think about it, Robin? You go, well, I think it'd be here. And I said, well, why'd you come up with this idea? Because I had a challenge. Maybe my family member got affected. Let's make sure we have that in that business, in that model, because when we commercialize what we're doing, which has huge potential, what you've developed now, Robin, is an idea that enables more people to do new things. So you stay where you are because you're brilliant. Keep on working on ideas. Think about other things that we can apply as we start multiplying it, and we'll apply a company that has the skill sets that will bring that to market in partnership with you. Analytics, data science, networking opportunities, internet, all the technologies that are current and in our future, as they blend together, we'll apply that enabling ingredient into a new recipe, which is a company that addresses a solution. We won't patent your idea. We'll patent the solution that your idea makes happen. Therefore, your IP is protected. Number two, we can create not only one application of your endeavor, but we can apply it to 4 or 5 significant problems that will solve environmental, humanity, disparity, whatever it is. We'll apply it to solutions that solve these challenges as a humanitarian company. So now you're sitting in your lab or your home or wherever you like to ideate in, and you're seeing these things, and you contribute to that. And part of the growth of that is supporting how we would bring these things that your technology enables to do, pairing with our engineering and our mathematics and our scientists and our web guys and our marketing and sales and everything else, complement you as an entrepreneur. That you're not have those skill sets, but we marry those 2 pieces of DNA together and be successful. And we could spawn multiple solutions with your idea embedded in it, where every time it gets sold, bought, or purchased, you earn a royalty and a license. And should it get sold, you own a piece of equity and do exactly what you did as an entrepreneur to affect these areas and have a mechanism which you can be successful, because we have a whole support system, an ecosystem to put that on. Now I pair with you. And then the winners are how we design the application to support those winners. Help people get well is one of them.
I love that in so many ways, because again, like my only rule that I have is you don't interfere with Mother Nature. God, whatever we see, this blueprint, physics, is another name. Mm-hmm. So that blueprint is, we all have equal share, and no person is an island. I can't be successful by myself. Yes, we've seen how that works, and we see, but it's finite, and usually a bunch of people have to lose on the way. That's right. For that to happen. This approach is taking the blueprint of physics, Mother Nature, universe, and applying it so that I come in with these ideas. Maybe I'm just an idea person, and I've got this idea, and they're all for the mutual benefit, but I can't make them happen. They're just spinning around in my head, and they're all dying out, like the plant that you don't send your alpha waves to. And so we're losing this brilliance, this flow.
And then also see the victims out of that machine coming to those accelerators, those hackathons. And eventually the word gets spread around. They go, well, F Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
I'm not going to there because they're going to rip me off. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to participate. Well, we just lost a brain trust. We lost an idea maker. We lost a human being. And
maybe you jaded some people as well, because you exploited them. They had a brilliant idea. You see, like, oh, AT&T just converted that to a multi-billion-dollar business, and that was my idea that I got $5,000 for.
That's right.
Our
mechanism's not designed for that. Our mechanism, the way we have our model set up, is to marry that DNA of creativity, the DNA of skills to commercialize and build organizations and solutions that satisfy humanity challenges.
And that's why I think my audience can now understand why I have renewed faith, because this is what I have been waiting for. someone to come in, not just with, with a mom and pop brick and mortar store and an idea, but this is global. This is universal. This
paradigm shift is what we're doing.
It's a paradigm shift of a sick-based system that's profiting on cash cow customers getting sicker and sicker to one of, I do better when you do better.
That's right.
I get a triple win. So, Steve, I'm going to be respectful of your time. I think you are a brilliant man. I'm forever in your debt just simply for that renewed faith. I really needed it just in that moment where our friend introduced us. So, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for that. Thank you for your...
I'd like to interject one small thing. A recent acquaintance of mine who I met because we're bringing some of their technologies to market. We're enabling, what our platform enables them to do is really expand what they're doing, is a Nobel Prize winner, a doctor that's created a global platform for doctors. And he said, Steve, it takes a team to have a Nobel Prize team. And he's one of that knows because he's received that award. He says, what I see what you guys have here is just that. We are a team. It's not me. It's our team of people we have. Everybody is contributing to this. And as we get bigger, our movement takes hold. We'll now be able to grow out of that issue. We don't want to challenge the old guard. We want to grow away from the old guard to a better place. And that's what our mission, part of that is. And so I want to make sure that you understand, I might be the gold guy lighting up the fires, but it's the collective of people now that we've been inspired with ideas such as yourself on how we can move these things forward is what's beautiful about what we're doing, because it's all positive.
Well, that's what our whole podcast up to this point has been on. It's not, I think that came to me recently was, would I solve the world today? And all of this that's happening, if no one ever knew I did anything, and I would say, absolutely, yes, I don't need my name on it. I have a idea of what I want to see happen.
Yeah.
And whatever it takes to make that happen, if it always is a village. I don't have this wealth of information because I was isolated in a bubble on some island. I have it because I am part of the collective, and the collective helped me learn. Some were, a little more effective than others, but it's still part of that process. All my failures are part of that process. So now if we can harness that consciously, harness the village consciously so that we're all now understanding we're in this together to solve and to create and to evolve into something perhaps has never even been thought of yet.
Yeah, no, we have a legacy for humanity. We're here. We're not saying we are legacy. We are planting the seeds for that future, and that for I think our generations behind us may not be cognizant of that, but it'll be part of their environment. We've made a shift that's consciously generated because we have some very smart people in our environment that are involved in helping us form that. So that's what's beautiful about it. The collective of intelligence is amazing.
The collective intelligence, and that's everyone has their own brand of genius.
Exactly.
And that's the thing that excites me. It's almost like we have all these novels that have never been read, that have never even been opened. So where's the next Shakespeare? Where's the next Einstein? Where's the next Steve? It's out there right now. And this concept, this modality, this legacy creation is opening the doors for that to be able to see, what's in this book? Yeah. And there's so many of us right now on this planet that I think that's a incredible way to be able to do exactly what you're saying.
That's right. The knowledge, like I said, when my father said, always cherish knowledge, sharing it forward. Knowledge will be able to make sure that we assure futures. Don't erase it. Don't forget it. And that's what it means for what we're doing, because now we have a collective.
Right.
So now we have the minds moving in the right direction, and the ease in which we can do this will become more and more of a movement, and it'll gain momentum as more people start understanding there is a better way to do things for our planet, for our people, for everything in our future, for our legacy, but also, why we are here.
I agree with you completely. And I agree with that. That just feels to me like flow.
Yeah, flow it is.
In essence of everything that we're talking about, triple win, flow, it is that energy. It's not fighting and resistance and slugging your way uphill.
There's nothing grating away at your entity.
Exactly. And it's not like I'm selling my soul for $1. I'm not slowly grating my soul with sandpaper so that it's a means to an end. Well, I have to work at this horrible job so that I can be in this house so I could be happy and have my family. No, none of it grates on your soul. None of it is the sandpaper to your soul. Your soul is this vibrant piece that's leading the way. The brain's good at getting you from point A to point B, following the instructions of the soul. But now we're getting what we're talking about in essence is allowing everyone's soul to flourish and shine.
That's correct.
And not everyone's going to. Like, that's part of the challenge of being on this planet.
Yeah, but at a certain stage, there's a median.
Yes.
Right? There's the ones that are really well, let's call it well-adjusted, right? And the ones that are not. And that curve, the bell curve, will move towards the more well-adjusted. We won't be everybody in the pool, but eventually that curve will move towards that direction. And that's all we can hope to affect a movement, not to define it.
And not to throw the ones out of the pool or ostracize them or shame them, but to say, hey, how could we support you? Here's the opportunity. You have more opportunity now to rise up and be part of this system. Or not, but at least you have more of a choice.
That's right. Yeah. When you empower humanity, you foster growth and you foster all things positive.
That's what I love. And that's what we'll end on that. I wrote it down somewhere. Just that an unfettered imagination. I think I want to leave my audience with, if that's what you get out of this, that piece of your soul, that unfettered imagination, the potential that we have when we're able to engage in things like the Human Anatomy Project, or we're able to engage in just sitting around and having ideas that are triple wins, and just flowing with that. Like, imagine your life right now just in flow, constant flow state. Of course, it's challenged. We're human beings, but I love that. Everything that you've brought forward gives me faith that we are becoming the change we wish to see in the world.
There you go.
Thank you, Gandhi, for that.
And coming up next, we're going to be talking about how we can extend life and longevity, wellness and well-being well into your hundreds.
And that's what I'm really interested in. And women are. I don't want to do any harmful procedures. I don't want to inject botulism in my body.
Nature's here to heal. We just unlock the key, and we know how to bring it to market now. And that's what make sure everybody gets to it.
So I have you on record as we're going to get a part 2.
Oh, sure. We'll love to talk about that. I'm thrilled about what this is, and I've experienced it myself.
Yes.
And I tell you, my wife saw me coming down the stairs today. She says, "I've never seen you move that fast." I said,
"Yeah."
And I'm not hungry, and I'm not thirsty, and I don't have to go to the bathroom, so I must be feeling better.
Wow.
Right? So that's something we want to explore in depth. I'd like to really focus on what that means, because humanity has a hope for future, but you want to be your future. You want to be healthy and be able to appreciate it.
Exactly. And feel into our potential. And I appreciate that that's what we can now set our little trim tabs on our sailboat towards.
That's right. So the next thing we'll talk about is just that there is, the human body has an ability to make you live a long time, very well, very healthy, and well-being, without drugs or chemicals. And
Well, I could
it's
be your
it's not a
test
hype
subject.
at all. So, but these are really good things that can happen. We'll talk about case studies and what that means as well, and things that we've shown that we can prove, not fairy tales. So it's very important to understand there is bigger things for us in our future, and hopefully all of us will live a nice, happy, long, and healthy adulthood all the way to our even to our hundreds. Our saying right now is 100 is the new 50.
There, absolutely. I agree with that. And I will be on board with that 100%.
There you go.
So I'm going to have all the links to the Human Anatomy Project in the show notes. Where should people go if they want to learn more about this and if they want to donate or become part of this movement?
The Human Anatomy Project is where we're taking the technology and we're applying it to humanity. It is the forum in which we'll understand that. We work in conjunction with the Cell Atlas, understanding how the cells work. We understand how the genetics work. We interface with that. And now you can go there to the Human Anatomy Project webpage and support those researches. We're looking for people that contribute not only monetarily, but also socially. Also, if they'd like to participate, if you're a medical professional or you're any professional whatsoever, or even just a layman. We want to be able to hear from you and let your voice be heard. So if you have ideas, we'd be more than happy to answer all of those questions. So please go there and support that. It will mean a lot to everybody, and it is designed to support everybody in our species as well.
I love that. I love that. And thank you for being you. Thank you for giving me your time, Steve. And I look forward to connecting on our next longevity call.
There you go. Peace, guys. Have a great weekend,
Thanks.
okay?
All right. Take care.
Thank you.